second part of the second clip of improvisational intelligence. In this second part, I'm going to talk about how the different behaviors already described work together while we improvise. In order to show the interaction across the processes that I already discussed in part 1, I elaborated 3 models. Each model features a determinate number of behaviors in specific relationships. Under each type, we find a list, so to say, of specific behaviors. For example, under residual behaviors, we find functional strategies. Under monitoring behaviors, we find continuous assessment, anticipated hearing, assessment points, and so on. Emergent features focus, reacting, adjusting the scripts, and compositional thinking and predictive behaviors. A few things to say about the graphic representation of the model. In the residual and the emergent behaviors, we find the boxes that feature operational behaviors with orange backgrounds. In the emergent behaviors, we find boxes with a pink background, and those are the informative behaviors. As we can see, each box is connected to others through lines, through arrows. Some are double pointed, some are single pointed. Single pointed arrows suggest that one box triggers the other or shows a cause and effect relationship, either cause and effect or sequential relationship. And those lines that are double pointed arrows suggest that both boxes can either be the cause or the effect. So there is a relationship of reciprocity between those boxes. And they can also mean that both boxes are available simultaneously. That means that instead of being a cause and effect, the relationship is of simultaneity. In other words, both boxes work together. So let's start breaking down model 1. To discuss the mechanics of the model, I have to somewhat arbitrarily start somewhere. The point of departure that I'm going to use is only for the sake of discussing the model. The cognitive activity can actually start anywhere in the model. So let's say that I start my improvisation, my first cognitive process. In this case, is going to be an assessment point. What shall I do? How should I start? I'm already informing my compositional thinking in the emergent behaviors. It is a good way to start with a fairly sparse texture. My compositional thinking goes back to assessment point, and I say, yep, that seems like a good idea. I search now in my functional strategies because my assessment point has identified an improvisational problem, which is how to construct a sparse texture. And my functional strategies give me a reservoir of ideas, and I choose, okay, we're going to start with a non-triadic chord, which is this. All right, I'm playing, it's like an F major in first inversion with the second added. As I hear this, my functional strategy is being assessed immediately afterwards by an assessment point again. And my assessment point is informing also, or working along with my anticipated hearing. And my anticipated hearing is informing the compositional thinking. We want to move the bass note. Compositional thinking is approved by assessment points and in fact informs my functional strategy. Okay, just activate the bass and move it by a semitone down. And then I'm going to repeat this through my assessment points, which is actually informing my compositional thinking, saying, okay, let's repeat this pattern going half a step. So my bass is going from A to G sharp, and now this becomes a pattern that I'm reacting to. This pattern has been stored in my continuous assessment. I'm reacting to it, and I decide to apply it in further compositional thinking through my anticipated hearing and my functional strategies. say that I do this once, and I do this again. Snapshots of elapsed time kick in. My functional strategies played this twice to construct consistency, and my functional strategies now is triggering snapshots of elapsed time. Is it time to move on? I played this once, I played it once again, twice. Okay, my assessment point is being triggered by a snapshot of elapsed time, and the answer is yes, we want to move on. My anticipated hearing now is telling me we want to hear something else, for instance. And anticipated hearing in this case was informed by functional strategies. Move the voices so as to create the sense of modulation or change of chord. So now we play back the improvisation, quote unquote. This is what I have. All right. Now let's say that I land on this chord and I assess what happens next. I'm at an assessment point. I decide to focus on this material. For instance, on the theme of the seconds. Here I'm playing a harmonic second. Here I was playing a harmonic second, both major seconds. And before I was playing minor seconds. So from this, at this point, I decide to focus the material on the seconds, major and minor. And this is informing my compositional thinking. Consequently, whatever I'm going to play next is going to be informed by compositional thinking around major and minor seconds. This is going to inform my assessment points because I'm going to need some functional strategies here. My assessment point is determining, okay, here we go with compositional thinking, major and minor seconds, what can we do with this? And my functional strategy says, okay, let's play some blocks with major seconds on both hands, separated by whatever interval. Now this whatever interval is, to a certain extent, an unpredicted procedure, because I know that this is consistent, the intervals within each hand, but I'm not thinking that fast, so I'm not concerned with being too accurate about what the interval is going to be between these two major seconds and these other two major seconds. So let's say that I continue with this for a bit, and unless stated, I will carry on. But now I'm going to adjust the script. I'm not carrying on. I'm going to focus on this. I'm reacting to this last sound, and I decide to focus on it. So now I adjust the script. I'm not playing unpredicted anymore. Now I'm creating a sort of riff on this one, on this motif. In a nutshell, this is how Model 1 works. Model 1 has a few specific features, mainly focuses on functional strategies, assessment points, and compositional thinking. As we can see, if we connect the dots between functional strategies to assessment points to compositional thinking back and forth, there's like a current going on from emergent to monitoring to residual. And this basic procedure, this basic interaction is enhanced by all the other processes, which, as we see in the model, there are some loops within the model. For instance, at certain points I can focus on assessment points and feed functional strategies, which are reassessed by snapshots of elapsed time, and I may reassess again and keep applying functional strategies. In this case, this loop would revolve around a very focused idea that I keep sort of tweaking. Let's say that I go with this. Assessment point, snapshot of elapsed time. I've done this enough now, a third time. Modulate. Now, one more time to change the the tonality in the left hand, in the right hand, sorry. Functional strategy, back to the beginning to create consistency. So in what I was just doing, I was looping functional strategies to snapshots, to assessment points, to functional strategies, to snapshots, to assessment points. I can have other loops within the model, such as compositional thinking to assessment points, to focus, compositional thinking. So this model, as we see, is very rich and it allows to be used in two different ways. One is by using the loops within the model. As I just demonstrated, I gave the example of 2 loops, but there could be more. And the other way to use this model is through using the entire network. In this case, establishing activity through the boxes and through the arrows across the 3 areas. For example, functional strategy. In this case, strong beginning. Assessment point. What next? Open up the texture. Now I'm compositional thinking in emergent pairs. Okay, react to this interval, the major 6 on the top voice. See? So 6 again. Now I'm focusing, right? In that case, I went from functional strategies to assessment point, focus and reacting both together, informing my compositional thinking, being assessed and stored in my continuous assessment, and informing my functional strategies again. In this case, be consistent with the gestures, reworking the interval of the major 6. The purpose of all this discussion is that we can break down or focus on different things we think while we improvise. The purpose is not to serve the model in a dogmatic way. That would be an erroneous application of the theory. So, for instance, in what way can this model be useful for me? Well, here's an example. Let's say that I improvise and I record myself, and I may find that perhaps my improvisations sound a little random. Say something along the lines of this. So there seems to be a lack of direction there, as if I'm searching. Now, using this model, probably I would say, well, maybe we need to insert some assessment points. So give yourself a little bit of time to assess what's happening. So assess. Is there anything good or anything that valuable that I can react to? And I would say, okay, yes, this is a nice motif to start a melody. Let's focus on it. Now I'm informing my compositional thinking. How can I build a discourse or a phrase using this motif? And now I'm informing or drawing rather from my functional strategies. Okay. Invert. Invert playing in my left hand. So I'm creating a sort of invention type of texture by focusing on an idea. So already the network, using the network, is starting to change how I think and consequently my music. The issue of lacking direction by incorporating focus, reacting, functional strategies, compositional thinking is starting to feel more under control. Model 2. Model 2 seeks to illustrate a very different type of frame of mind. As I mentioned before, Model 1 focuses on functional strategies a lot and on compositional thinking. Therefore, this Model 1 represents a more conscious and more coherent type of thinking, a type of thinking that values consistency development. In Model 2, we encounter fewer cognitive processes, fewer boxes. And the residual behaviors, we have embedded strategies. Under monitoring, we find continuous assessment and non-reactive monitoring, as well as objective hearing. And in the emergent behaviors, we find search and safe play. To start discussing this model, take as an arbitrary point of departure embedded strategies. As I already explained in the first part of this clip, embedded strategies consist of managing material in a way that is common sense to me, that is very familiar, to the point that I'm not even thinking too hard, sort of by placing my fingers on the keyboard and playing something that comes very natural to me. In this case, it's an ostinato. The only monitoring that is happening here is that I'm working in continuous assessment at this moment. This type of monitoring is what I call a non-reactive monitoring. Non-reactive monitoring means that continuous assessment doesn't generate an assessment point or active anticipated hearing, in the sense that, I would like to hear this next. In order to make that decision, I need much more active type of monitoring. I need to be more alert, for which I would need to change the model. So here I am I know that I'm playing, I know what I'm playing, major third with an octave in the bass, but I'm not reacting to it, other than just keep repeating it. And this is what I call safe play. So the material that is emerging from it, from this type of thinking, is relatively safe. And unless I change the model, most likely I will remain quite safe. Sometimes, during this safe play, I may also think in terms of searching. And searching is searching for something, but we do not know what. So it's sort of like being alert, a little bit alert to what may happen. Okay, so yeah, I know I want to go somewhere, but I'm not sure where. In order to decide where, I would need to go into my Model 1 and access either focus or access a functional strategy, the improvisational problem, where do we want to go. There is another form of monitoring that happens in this model, which is objective hearing. When the music is quite simple and safe, and I'm playing material that is second nature to me, I may detach from the act of playing and hear the music, listen to the music as if it was played by someone else. This is quite common in improvisation. Well, actually in all forms of performing, it can happen. Model 2 is linear. If we have a look at the arrows, they all move from left to right. There are no double-pointed arrows. That means there are no loops. The only thing that can happen is that the model loops itself. The cognitive state or the frame of mind represented by this model is quite simple and can solve a rather specific or determinate or a small number of improvisational problems. Model 1, because it can establish loops and has sort of mini models within itself, sort of micro models within Model 1, it can solve more problems, a wider range of problems. Model 3 is a very complex model again. It features many boxes. Within residual behaviors, I have functional strategies, but this time the strategies are informed by a number of informative processes: long-term oral memory, working oral memory, and preconceptions. The monitoring system of Model 3 uses the same processes as Model 1: continuous assessment, snapshots and assessment points, and anticipated hearing, although they seem to be combined slightly different. And the emergent behaviors mainly consist in adjusting the script. It's an informative behavior. So to discuss this model, let's agree that we're going to start with preconceptions. In this case will be, okay, let's use F sharp Dorian. So this preconception is already informing my long-term oral memory. I got this sound embedded in my memory, and it's informing my functional strategies. Okay, if you want to convey this sound, that being the improvisational problem, give me the chord and also make sure that you play the natural sixth of the scale, which is the distinctive note of the Dorian mode. So I'm already using preconceptions which were drawing from long-term oral memory, informing my functional strategies. So far, what my functional strategies are doing is convey the sound. Now, this is creating a store of material in my continuous assessment, which also can trigger a snapshot of elapsed time or an assessment point. Okay, what do I want to hear next? I don't want to really get stuck here. And my anticipated hearing may want to say, okay, yeah, let's go to the fourth chord of the mode. Now here I may go to another assessment point and decide what comes next, and my working oral memory may say, okay, we just use the fourth chord, so we went from 1 to 4, how about if we go now up another fourth, right? Now let's say that I do this, back to flat 7, back to 4, back to 1. And now my snapshot of elapsed time kicks in and says, okay, I've done this twice. I think it's time to move on. And now I'm entering adjusting the script. My improvisation is moving into a more emergent type of thinking. Let's move away from the Dorian sound and let's go to a different sound. B flat major 7, abandoning the key, completely new section in the improvisation. Another alternative would be to use reacting. So start with a brand new example. I say, okay, I want something dissonant. Okay, here's my preconception. Minor seconds followed by major sevenths. This is informed by my long-term memory and already has produced a store of continuous assessment that is informing my working oral memory. I know this sound, I know this sound. Okay, I just use these two sounds. Okay, so now my functional strategies say, yes, let's elaborate on this a little bit more. This is good thematic material. My anticipated hearing now wants to go higher in the register. So I'm monitoring what's happening here. Functional strategies, let's be consistent and use this material again, but my anticipated hearing is telling me go up. So it sounds a little bit like a proposition and conclusion. So in this case, I may react to something that just happened already, which is, I like the angularity. I'm reacting to this sound. Right? And this reaction may inform my adjusting the script. Let's forget about the minor seconds now, and my major seventh. Now I'm focusing on angularity. I'm adjusting the script. I'm not pursuing intervallic thinking. Now I'm thinking more in terms of contour. And by adjusting the script, I may retrieve another functional strategy. Now my problem is to construct a melody using angularity, and here's my functional strategy applied. Just to summarize, a few conclusions about the models. The models, first of all, are simplifications or templates to illustrate the cognitive mechanics, to be able to talk about them. In reality, the breakdown is a lot more blurred or not so clear cut. Another important feature about the models is that each model represents a frame of mind. Model 1 is more forward-looking, how to develop my improvisation in terms of compositional thinking, how to solve problems that emerge. Model 2 is a more laid-back, a more in the present type of frame of mind. Model 3 is a more backward-looking model because it focuses on preconceptions. So according to where our attention goes, the models help us understand how we are thinking at specific times. So the third conclusion is that within each model, there is a number of processes that are more prominent and seem to be driving the cognitive activity at that specific time. For example, in Model 1, functional strategies and assessment points and compositional thinking seem to be the ones that drive the cognitive activity. In Model 2, safe play and embedded strategies seem to be the driving forces. In Model 3, preconceptions are an important part of the model. I'm hoping this second part of the clip has been informative. I thank you very much for watching. I'm hoping this is being useful. In the next part of the clip, I will cover the interaction across the models. See you in a moment.